Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteus and you are watching The World Report. Let's take a look at the headlines this hour. Syrian rebels take the capital city Damascus. The rebel group stormed the city and met little resistance from the government forces, ending the 50-year Assad regime. President Assad is missing and is said to have left the country for an unknown location. South Korean authorities arrest former defense minister amid backlash over martial law declaration. South Korean president survives impeachment by 5 votes, but faces suspension off duties until he steps down as per ruling party demands. President Zelensky and President-elect Donald Trump meet at Notre Dame Cathedral reopening. The two leaders discussed Ukraine's NATO ambitions and US support during discreet talks. US-China tensions heighten further. The US House is set to vote on a $3 billion allocation to remove Chinese telecom equipment. The move follows accusation of China hacking calls of senior US political figures. A synagogue in Melbourne is set on fire in an anti-Semitic act of violence. It sparks widespread condemnation in the city and has been labelled an act of terrorism by Australian Prime Minister Albanese. Authorities are searching for the perpetrators. Notre Dame Cathedral reopens its doors 5 years after a fire severely damaged its roof in 2019. Pope Francis welcomed notable guests to the finalised €700 million restoration project, including world leaders, British royalty and one Elon Musk. An important update has come from the Middle Eastern nation of Syria. Rebels have claimed the fall of Assad regime, declaring victory. While the president has allegedly fled, Prime Minister al-Jalali has stated that he will cooperate in the change of power. Here is the full story.
تم بحمده تعالى تحرير مدينة دمشق وإسقاط الطاغية بشار الأسد وإطلاق سراح جميع المعتقلين المظلومين من سجون النظام. إن غرفة عمليات فتح دمشق تهيب بالإخوة المجاهدين والمواطنين والحفاظ على جميع ممتلكات الدولة السورية الحرة. عاشت سوريا حرة أبية لكل السوريين بجميع أطيافهم.
On Sunday morning, Syrian rebel factions declared victory over President Bashar al-Assad, announcing the fall of Damascus and the end of his reign. The city erupted in celebration as residents flooded the streets, cheering and chanting.
مشاعر ما تنوصف ابدا. استنينا هذا اليوم من زمان، صارنا 13 سنه 14 سنه عم نستنى هذا اليوم. سقوط بشار الاسد يعني سوريا جديده بالنسبه لنا.
ايرو سوري 54 سال جي ظلمه جي زورداريه جي ازاديه الطويله دقوتن حافظ اسد الى الابد عبد بيجن ازادي الى الابد.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mohammed al-Jalali expressed,
لأي قيادة يختارها الشعب السوري ونحن مستعدون للتعاون معها بحيث نقدم لهم كل التسهيلات الممكنة وبحيث يتم نقل الملفات الحكومية المختلفة بشكل سلس.
At the same time, the rebels, led by Islamist Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, assured that government institutions would remain under the Prime Minister's care until a new government was established. This comes at a time when reports confirmed Assad's departure from Syria, with his forces abandoning Damascus and key positions. On the other hand, the notorious Sednaya prison, an alleged symbol of the regime's cruelty, was opened, freeing thousands of prisoners. The rebels' rapid advance began on November 27th and quickly captured key cities like Aleppo, Homs and Hama. With Damascus now in rebel hands, the fall of the Assad regime marked a profound turning point. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from North America. China's recent export restrictions on materials like gallium, germanium, antimony and graphite are expected to impact the US clean energy and defense industries, analysts warn. These materials are essential for semiconductors, solar cells and electric vehicles. The move follows US curbs on China chip-making capabilities and could escalate trade tensions. While the immediate effects may be limited, experts suggest the long-term consequences could include increased costs and uncertainty for US companies reliant on these materials. China is a key global producer of these metals. Authorities in New York have identified a suspect in the fatal shooting of United Health executive Brian Thompson, who was targeted outside a hotel ahead of the company's investor conference. Police have gathered significant evidence, including fingerprints, DNA, and video footage of the suspect's movements. The shooter, who fled the scene and may have left the city, is believed to have premeditated the attack. A reward has been offered for information leading to the suspect's capture, but the motive remains unknown. The White House stated on Saturday that US priorities in Syria focus on preventing a resurgence of ISIS and avoiding a humanitarian disaster. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan emphasized that the US is closely monitoring developments in Syria and coordinating with regional allies. With ongoing fighting and lightening offense by rebel forces, concerns over ISIS regaining ground have intensified. The US maintains about 900 troops in Syria, working with Kurdish forces to curb ISIS activities. Sullivan stressed the importance of preventing the spread of instability while ensuring the protection of civilians and ethnic minorities. 3 men accused of kidnapping and robbing a girl were lynched by a crowd in San Juan Amacac, central Mexico on Saturday. Authorities reported that approximately 300 people participated in the vigilante attack, hanging and beating the men until they were dead. Despite police arriving at the scene, the men showed no vital signs. This incident is part of a broader rise in vigilante justice in Mexico, often fueled by perceptions of impunity and a growing violence linked to drug trafficking. Similar lynchings have been reported in other regions, including at Lixco and Taxco, in recent months. 7 individuals were arrested in connection with a social media drug ring targeting Rutgers University students, Middlesex. County Prosecutor Yolanda Sissoni announced, dubbed Operation Roof Farm. The long-month investigation uncovered a private network where drugs like marijuana, cocaine, and LSD were sold. Former student Anudeep Reverie, 23, was charged as the leader of the ring, alongside 6 others who faced multiple drug-related charges. Authorities seized narcotics, cash, and a firearm during the sting. The case follows similar campus drug rings, including a 2020 bust at Chapel Hill and Duke University. 6 individuals tragically lost their lives in a car crash late Friday in Newark, New Jersey. Prosecutors confirmed the vehicle veered off the Route 1 and 9 southbound on-ramp, became airborne and struck a Pulaski Highway support column before catching fire. All 6 occupants were pronounced dead at the scene. The victims' identities remain undisclosed. The Essex County Prosecutor's Office continues its investigation. A press briefing on the incident is scheduled for Monday. South Korea's impeachment motion against President Yoon Suk-yeol has failed by a narrow margin of 5 votes. But the ruling People Power Party has vowed Yoon's orderly retreat. Meanwhile, democratic protests unfold on the streets of Seoul as protesters groove to K-pop songs and chant slogans, either calling for Yoon's ouster or backing the president's move for martial law. Here is the report.
The impeachment motion against the South Korean president over a brief martial law mayhem fell short of passing by a margin of 5 votes on Saturday as the ruling People Power Party staged a walkout while the rest of the parliament voted. However, President Yoon Suk-yeol still finds himself on thin ice. The leader of the People Power Party has said that the president will not interfere in state affairs and has vowed an orderly retreat.
질서 있는 대통령 조기 퇴진으로 대한민국과 국민들께 미칠 혼란을 최소화하면서 안정적으로 정국을 수습하고 자유민주주의를 바로 세우겠습니다. 퇴진 전이라도 대통령은 외교를 포함한 국정에 관여하지 않을 것입니다.
Han has informed that the Prime Minister will consult with the party to ensure that state affairs are managed without disruption. However, the Speaker of the South Korean Parliament, Woo Won-sik, called it a violation of the Constitution.
위헌적 비상계엄에 대한 헌법적 책임을 묻는 헌법적 절차에는 참여하지 않은 채로 그 누구도 부여한 바 없는 대통령의 권한을 총리와 여당이 공동 행사하겠다고 하는 것은 명백한 위헌입니다.
Meanwhile, the former defense minister of the country, Kim Yong-hun, was arrested. It has come amid an ongoing police investigation for alleged insurrection. The political turmoil has divided the South Korean citizens, while around 150,000 protesters, demonstrating in front of the parliament, called for the president to resign. Thousands gathered elsewhere in Seoul in support of Yoon. Stemmed by South Korea's painful history of dictatorship, anti-Yoon protesters vowed to continue the demonstrations until the president steps down.
네, 아무래도 좋진 않죠. 당연히 좋진 않지만 그래도 앞으로도 계속해서 촛불 밝히고 퇴진 요구할 거니까 너무 낙심하지만은 말자라는 기분입니다.
Protesters in favor of Yoon resonated with the president's initial argument of eradicating what he called pro-North Korean anti-state forces by imposing martial law.
네. 저는 계속해서 대한민국의 또 주사파를 척결하기 위해서 또 간첩을 척결하기 위해서 윤석열 대통령께서 계엄령을 선포하셨다고 저는 생각을 하고 그렇게 또 진행을 하고 있으신데 계속해서 우리가 또 윤석열 대통령께서 해명을 하셔야만 되는 상황이 놓이는 것만 같아서 저는 솔직히 좀 안타까운 심경이 답답한 심경이 좀 큽니다.
What is now to be seen is if a new impeachment motion, which the South Korean opposition is set to raise in the parliament on December 14th, can materialize. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's have a look at some news stories from Europe. At least 5 people have died and 4 others have been injured after explosions rocked a block of flats in The Hague. Firefighters have rushed to the 3-story building following the blast, which caused the collapse of several homes in the Tower Camp area at around 5:15 GMT on Saturday. The city's mayor, Jan van Zezen, has stated that it is still unknown how many people remain missing. The far-right Alternative for Germany has nominated co-leader Alice Weidel as its first chancellor candidate in the party's 11-year history. The party has not been likely to form part of a governing coalition anytime soon, other than parties have ruled out working with it, despite having ranked second in the polls behind the main opposition Conservatives. The Romanian far-right presidential candidate appeared at a polling station where he would have voted on Sunday. He called the Constitutional Court's decision to cancel the ballot fatal for democracy. The court annulled the ongoing presidential election after accusations of Russian interference. Georgia's president has said she discussed the parliamentary election last month in her country with the US President-elect Donald Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron. She and the opposition claim the election was rigged. 2 people have been killed and hundreds of thousands are without power across the UK and Ireland as Storm Dara brought high winds and heavy rain to the region. Gusts of wind up to 149 kilometers per hour were recorded, prompting officials to issue a rare emergency warning by phone. The alert was sent to around 3 million households in Wales and southwest England early on Saturday. Vladimir Putin has signed a treaty offering security guarantees to Belarus, including the possible use of Russian nuclear weapons in case of aggression. The signing during Putin's visit to Minsk follows Russia's revised nuclear doctrine. This doctrine now includes Belarus under its nuclear umbrella amid rising tensions with the West over the Ukraine war. French President Emmanuel Macron hosted talks with US President-elect Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky. The two leaders arrived in Paris to attend the reopening ceremony of the Notre Dame Cathedral. What all was discussed in the trilateral meeting? Let's have a look.
On Saturday, French President Emmanuel Macron hosted a trilateral talk with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President-elect Donald Trump at the Élysée Palace. The meeting was held on the sidelines of the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral, for which the two leaders were invited. Trump's visit marked his first international trip and also the first face-to-face meeting with Zelensky since being elected. Zelensky and European leaders have been concerned that Trump as president could withdraw US military aid to Ukraine in war with Russia. However, surprisingly, Zelensky described the meeting as productive.
Я хочу подякувати президенту Еммануелю Макрону за те, що він організував нашу зустріч, важлива зустріч Еммануеля, моя і президента Трампа. Дуже хороша зустріч. Важливо, що вона конструктивна і атмосфера важлива, що ми розмовляємо, ми говоримо про Україну, говорили вже ж тільки про Україну і про українців.
Whereas the president-elect said that Zelensky wants deal to stop the Ukraine war as he called for immediate ceasefire and negotiations. After the meeting, Trump gave Zelensky a firm handshake and patted him on the back. Interestingly, hours after this meeting, the outgoing President Joe Biden's administration announced a new $988 million military assistance package for Ukraine. The package featured drones, ammunition for HIMARS rocket launchers, tanks and armored vehicles, among others. Zelensky also met with Austria's Chancellor Karl Nehammer in Paris to discuss extending Austria's support for Ukraine in the coming year. Talking of support, Ukraine has also received a second batch of F-16 fighter jets from Denmark. Zelensky thanked the Danish Prime Minister Mette in a post on X. Despite the diplomacy and continuous support, the fate of the Russia-Ukraine war remains uncertain. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let us take a look at some stories from the Indo-Pacific region. South Korea's Interior Minister Lee Sang-min resigned on Sunday. Lee admitted to failing to serve the public and the president properly. President Yoon Suk-yeol accepted his resignation. Both Lee and Yoon are under investigation for alleged insurrection after martial law was declared on Tuesday. Yoon narrowly avoided impeachment on Saturday. Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri will visit Bangladesh on December the 9th, the Ministry of External Affairs announced. The visit comes amid growing tensions over attacks on Hindus in Bangladesh. Misri's trip to Dhaka will be a part of a scheduled Foreign Office consultations. The recent violence against Hindus in Bangladesh has strained ties between the two countries since Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's ouster in August. In Balochistan, Pakistan, 3 security personnel were killed in 2 separate attacks. In the Duki district, 2 soldiers died and 3 others were injured in a rocket and grenade assault on a checkpost. Security forces retaliated, causing some casualties among the attackers, but the exact number is unclear. In Gwadar, a Pakistan Coast Guard patrol was targeted with an IED near a lighthouse, killing 1 security personnel. Japan, the United States and the Philippines will hold their first trilateral maritime consultation in Tokyo on Tuesday. The meeting will focus on the South China Sea, where China has increased its activities. The 3 countries will discuss ways to strengthen a free and open maritime order based on the rule of law. Rule Nakamura, Director of Japan's Foreign Ministry's Southeast and Southwest Asian Affairs Department, will chair the meeting. China sent 14 warships, 7 military aircraft and 4 balloons near Taiwan, Taiwan's defense ministry said. The activity took place between Saturday and Sunday. This comes amid speculation that Beijing may hold military drills around Taiwan. The drills could be a response to President Lai Ching-te's recent visit to Pacific allies, including the US stops in Hawaii and Guam. Sydney train commuters are warned of major disruptions on Monday due to industrial action. The disruption comes after a pay deal failed following 2 weeks of negotiations. Transport officials have sought an injunction in federal court to block the strike. However, Sydney trains confirm significant service reductions and cancellations, especially on intercity routes. The tech war between the US and China just intensified, from a $3 billion allocation to remove Chinese telecom equipment to allegations of Beijing spying on senior US political figures. Washington is stepping up its response to perceived security threats. Let's dive into the details.
The US House of Representatives will vote on a defense bill next week, allocating $3 billion for the removal of Huawei and ZTE equipment from American wireless networks. This RIP and replace program aims to address security risks posed by Chinese telecom firms. The Federal Communications Commission estimates the cost of removing the equipment at $4.98 billion, but the program faces a $3.08 billion funding shortfall. Meanwhile, tensions are further stoked by allegations that China orchestrated a cyber espionage campaign known as Salt Typhoon. US officials claim the hackers intercepted calls of senior political leaders, targeting telecom firms like Verizon, AT&T, and others.
China has dismissed the accusations as disinformation, reiterating its opposition to cyber theft. However, Washington has intensified its push for allies to purge Chinese telecom equipment, citing national security risks. The US defense bill also includes provisions for investigating China's biotechnology capabilities and alleged efforts to bypass security regulations, underlining the growing mistrust between the two superpowers. As Washington moves to counter Beijing's influence in technology and cybersecurity, the US-China tech war shows no signs of de-escalation, with both sides firmly entrenched in their positions. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's have a look at some stories from the world of business. US TikTok users have spent significantly on merchandise from various vendors on TikTok Shop during this holiday shopping season. The pattern suggests that TikTok Shop, which launched in the US in September 2023, has likely gained market share in e-commerce at a crucial time. TikTok Shop serves as an e-commerce platform for major brands such as Elf Cosmetics and Ninja Kitchen, among others. Europe's largest concentration of super-fast EV charging spaces is set to be built at a major shopping centre. The development will feature a new Starbucks drive-thru, an ultra-rapid charging hub, a supercharger lounge, a car showroom, and a new digital advertising screen, with plants growing up a vertical living wall. Not long after buying and publicly consuming a $6.2 million banana as part of a art world stunt, Chinese crypto entrepreneur Justin Sun made another attention-grabbing purchase. He invested $30 million into a cryptocurrency firm called World Liberty Financial. The company has struggled since its launch in October, with investors seemingly skeptical of its prospects and terms. The US government has approved the export of advanced AI chips to a Microsoft-operated facility in the United Arab Emirates. This is part of the company's closely watched partnership with Emirates AI firm G42, citing two sources with the deal. Microsoft invested $1.5 billion earlier in G42 earlier this year, acquiring a minority stake and a board seat. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that factory shutdowns would be a wrong move by Volkswagen, emphasizing that Europe's largest car maker has a responsibility to its employees. Volkswagen, in its heated dispute with staff over pay cuts and potential plant closures. The measures are aimed at addressing high costs in Germany and the growing competition from cheaper Asian rivals entering Europe. Both sides are set to enter a fourth round of negotiations on Monday. A pair of red ruby slippers worn by actress Judy Garland in the classic movie The Wizard of Oz have been sold for $28 million at a US-based auction on Saturday. One of the 4 surviving pairs used in the film, the iconic sequined pumps, were once stolen from a museum in Minnesota. And now to Melbourne, where a shocking act of arson at a local synagogue has sparked widespread condemnation and raised serious concerns about rising anti-Semitism in Australia. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has labelled the attack an act of terrorism as authorities continue their search for the perpetrators. Here is a report.
Anti-Semitism has been on the rise. We call it out wherever we see it.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has condemned a fire at the Adas Israel synagogue in Ripon Leah as the definition of terrorism. Masked arsonists targeted the building early Friday, leaving much of it gutted. Fortunately, there have been no serious injuries, but authorities remain on the hunt for the perpetrators. The Australian PM has expressed deep concern over what he describes as a worrying rise in anti-Semitism in Australia, vowing to call it out and ensure justice is served.
That this was a shocking incident should be unequivocally condemned. There's no place in Australia for an outrage such as this. To attack a place of worship is an attack on Australian values. To attack a synagogue is an act of anti-Semitism.
Opposition leader Peter Dutton has accused the Prime Minister of failing to take a firm stance against anti-Semitism, suggesting political motives may be at play. From Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has condemned the act, linking it to Australia's recent UN vote supporting a resolution that demands an end to Israel's unlawful occupation of Palestinian territories. Netanyahu has stated, anti-Israel sentiment is anti-Semitism, further criticising Canberra's position. Foreign Minister Penny Wong defends the UN vote, reaffirms support for a two-state solution, rejects anti-Semitism, and warns against politicising the attack. Finally, as tensions rise globally over the war in Gaza, protests in Australian cities have continued, with supporters of both Israel and Palestine taking to the streets. Bureau Report, NewsX.
And that is all we have time for. We'll be back with more news updates from around the world.
Thank you.